What's up, everyone? I'm Ethan, and I'm here with my boy Garrett.
What's going on?
And welcome to HIVE Sports, where we talk all things NFL and college football.
Today, straight off of the NFL draft, we got a Dynasty Superflex rookie mock draft for you all, so we can get you prepped for your Dynasty rookie drafts coming up. I'm sure a lot of you have already been in them. So ADP is live. It's moving quite rapidly. There's some risers. There's some fallers. Some of these guys that we really liked their tape. They landed in poor landing spots. They didn't get the draft capital that we expected, and vice versa, right? So there's guys that we were maybe not as high on, like a Kyle Williams pre-draft, that really, really vaulted up some of these rankings post-draft. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. And Ethan, I'm a little jealous. You're going to be up at 101, and you get the clear tier 1 player, right?
Yep. I'm not going to belabor any points. There's a clear 1-1 in all the kind of rookie mock drafts. So I'll lock it in with Ashton Genty first overall. Think no surprise there, and I'll pass it to you.
And he looks good in that Raiders uniform too, man. It definitely resembles our boy MJD quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
Go Jags, baby.
I love that comp. But all right, so 101, that's the easy selection. 102 is I think that's the first tier break, right? I think Genty's clear, easiest 101 in recent memory. And then 1-2 is kind of tricky because you have guys like Omarion Hampton. He got first round capital going to a run-heavy offense in LA. So that's a consideration. Travis Hunter, our wide receiver 1 pre-draft, went to your Jags, top 5. They traded out for him. I mean, they've been vocal that they're going to be using him a lot at wide receiver. So that's another consideration for me here at 102. And then obviously Cam Ward going 1-1, and this is a super flex format. So that's the last one that I would really strongly consider here. But talent-wise, I have to go Travis Hunter. I really think that he's the clear elite talent at the wide receiver position this year. And Tet McMillan also got a very good landing spot in Carolina, but I'm just gonna gamble on Travis Hunter playing a lot of wide receiver. And I think if he does play a lot of snaps at wideout on offense, he's going to be just a dominant talent for years to come. So I gotta go with him at 102. And that brings you to 103.
Yeah, and I got to add quickly on Travis Hunter, obviously as a Jags fan, I think too the way that they're going to utilize him, you got to think the big explosive plays are going to be designed for him. So I think when you're talking about fantasy where you want those explosive plays, those touchdowns, I think he's a great pick at the number 2 spot.
Yes,
dang, I thought he was going to drop to me in the 3 spot, but I'm pretty set on my number 3. I think at 103, I'm going to go Tet McMillan. I think Carolina drafted him to be their wide receiver 1. The last few weeks of the season, Bryce Young and the Carolina offense in general was hitting stride for sure. I think they have enough weapons now in offense to make them middle of the pack offense probably next season. And I think Tet will be a big reason for that. So I think I'm going to go Tet McMillan at 103.
I like the pick, and we also saw Bryce Young was vouching for him before the NFL draft.
That's true.
So I know they were working out together. They clearly have a good connection and some good chemistry between the two. And I think just personally, Ethan, I think that's a big get for Carolina because you get a guy who's being comped to Drake London. He's being comped to Mike Evans, 6'4", 219, runs a 4.5, so he's pretty athletic. He has incredible ball skills. He can high point the ball. He's out here making one-handed catches. So I think he brings a clear element to that Panthers offense.
Totally, and I think Bryce Young excelled pretty highly on kind of his deep balls last season. And he's a guy, even though he's pretty short in stature, was pretty successful throwing the ball across the middle of the field too. And that's Tet's bread and butter, right? That's where he can really create strong separation, is when he's moving across the middle of the field, when he's getting those deep throws where he can kind of catch those contested passes. So really excited. I think he fits really well. And I think having somebody like Adam Thielen too as that, old mentor there that can help him, develop as a player too, as a guy who, became a great wide receiver in the league based off of his work ethic, his, technique versus just his athletic ability generally. So really like that fit for Tet as a player and kind of him progressing as a wide receiver 1 in the league, but also I think he fits really well in that offense and what Bryce Young likes to do.
Yeah, and I think they had a lot of complimentary guys before the draft. They had, Jalen Coker was pretty good. They have Xavier Legette.
Yeah.
Like you said, the old man, Adam Thielen's still there. But they didn't really have a clear alpha number 1 wide receiver. And that's what I think Tet's going to bring Bryce. And Bryce was pretty hot down the stretch last year. He finished very strongly. So it'll be interesting to see if he carries that momentum forward into next year with the new weapon. 100%. But here at 4, man, you left me Cam Ward in Superflex. I don't think I can pass that up. It was a close call for me between him and some running backs here. But given the Superflex format, I think Cam Ward has a lot of upside to come in here and be a fantasy number 1 quarterback. I think he can be a top 12 guy if he develops correctly in Tennessee. So I couldn't pass that up, and gotta go with him right here at 4.
Yeah, and I like that pick a lot too, because I think Tennessee obviously is bringing him in to make that offense more high powered, and I think he has enough weapons around him to make a splash for sure. So I definitely like that pick. But I think that also makes my 105 spot pretty easy. I'm going to go with Amarian Hampton. I think early on people are going to be a little hesitant due to Najee being signed to a 1-year deal. But if we're talking Dynasty, right, we're kind of looking beyond that 1-year time frame. It's clear to me that Amarian Hampton is going to be that clear workhorse down the the next couple of years. And even by the middle of the season, I think he'll be the clear RB1 in an offense where Harbaugh wants to run the ball a lot. You have a great quarterback in Justin Herbert. You're improving your passing game. So I think Hampton's a good 105 there. So I'm glad he dropped me.
100%. Yeah, you get great value there in this 1.5 to 1.8 range this year. So it's a nice spot if you are at 1.2 and you can trade down to 1.5 to 1.8 and kind of pick up maybe another second or two. I think that is like a viable move this year. But anyways, that was a good pick at 5. At 6, I think I'm going to go with my boy Travion Henderson. I like the landing spot in New England, and I think he can be a dynamic PPR weapon, just catching a lot of passes, accumulating those PPR points.
Yeah, and I think Travion Henderson was the number 1 graded, or at least top graded pass blocking running backs coming into the draft. He has a great ball security, and I think that's what Ramondre Stevenson kind of struggled with at times. So you have a guy that in big time, big play downs where 3rd and 5+, he's going to be the guy that's going to be out there, right? He's the better pass blocker between the two. He's the better pass catcher, and he's a guy that I think is going to make some magic with the ball in his hands. So I think that's like you mentioned, and we had previous videos where we said that we liked his landing spot in New England. But I definitely like that pick at the 6th spot.
And it's still honestly pretty close between Hampton and Henderson for me personally. I think that those two are fairly interchangeable. But all right, who are you going to take at the 7th spot?
Yeah, so I think this is where, at least for me, is that kind of second teardrop, right? That's by saying that after Genty, there's a teardrop, right, from 2 through 6. I think if you have the 2 through 6 spot, you're able to kind of pick pretty freely based off people in front of you. I think Henderson at the 6th spot, if he drops to you, that's the guy, you take. So here's what's a little bit tougher for me, right?
What about Quinshon Judkins? I think some people would argue hey, you're disrespecting him by not including him in that tier, but I can see the argument for or against it.
Yeah, and I think if that offense had a little bit more clarity, I think I'd feel a little bit more confident with that pick. I think the quarterback situation makes me a little bit fearful or hesitant. But
all 5 of them?
I know. But that being said, you have the same thing with Caleb Johnson, who I think at this spot, is 2 people you can kind of consider at this 7th spot is Caleb Johnson or Quinshon Judkins. Neither one of them do have that quarterback solidified yet. But that being said, I think I am going to go Quinshon Judkins because I do think that Cleveland drafted him to be that workhorse running back. I know they have Dylan Sampson and they still have Jerome Ford too, but Quinshon is definitely out of those three built to be that workhorse in that offense. And I think because of their quarterback situation, let's say they start Joe Flacco or even Kenny Pickett, both those guys, aren't those kind of crazy deep ball passers or those guys that are going to, roll out when they're getting pressured. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for some dump offs too. So I like Quinshon Judkins. They use some good draft capital on him early on, and I think he has the tools to be a long-term back for Cleveland and replace what Nick Chubb was for years there.
No, yeah. I have no doubt that they're going to give him the opportunity to dominate on the ground. I guess my only concern would be, hey, they spent fourth-round capital on Dylan Sampson too, so clearly they have some kind of plan for Sampson, unless it's just to have some more depth. But he was a guy who, pre-draft, I think I liked him a little bit more than you. But he put up some serious numbers in the SEC last year, and I think if he wasn't injured and he actually ran the 40 at the combine, I could have easily seen him be like a 4.3 guy, maybe late 4.3s, early 4.4s. So he's definitely got a lot of speed and he's got the pass catching ability. So I have a little bit of pause about, hey, are they going to give Sampson a lot of these passing game touches?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think Judkins is going to be a dominant back regardless. But that's one thing that's kind of in the back of my mind a little bit.
Yeah, that's valid for sure.
All right. Well, at 1-8, this is another, I think, little mini tier break. Some people would say R.J. Harvey is in this tier, and maybe Caleb Johnson as well after those landing spots. I actually saw R.J. Harvey go above Judkins and Henderson the other day, so he's getting
he's a riser for sure, right? He's a riser that a lot of people. I was higher on R.J. Harvey than I think you were coming into the draft, and I think I was higher on R.J. Harvey than a lot of other people. And I think his situation in Denver is great. A young team that is developing, a young quarterback that has improved his game. That defense is getting even better with their offseason, pickups. And we know what Sean Payton likes to do with these kind of not your typical, 6 foot, 230-pound running back like we see with other guys. His time in New Orleans with Alvin Kamara, R.J. Harvey fits that super well. So, I'm not surprised that he's climbing.
I'm honestly still kind of thinking through the pick because there's quite a few guys that I would consider here. Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland both got really good capital. I'm a little worried about their landing spots. Tyler Warren especially, I'm not super confident in the Colts quarterback situation. So that is in the back of my mind a little bit. Colson Loveland has quite a bit of target competition, and then Cole Kmet's also there. We don't know how much he's going to be used, if at all, but it could be enough to eat into his targets just a little bit. So I'm a little bit
Luther Burden, right? You got three wide receivers who, all have high playability, high upside. So I agree. there's fear, but if you use a top 10 pick on somebody, you look
at Mecca Buka too. I think all of these guys you can kind of find this landing spot isn't great, or this landing spot's not the best. So there's definite holes there. And then Caleb Johnson, R.J. Harvey, I think those are definite considerations at running back. But for me, I think I'm going to go ahead and push up my boy Jackson Dart. Just being super flex, I'm confident in the talent. I think a lot of people would rather take him in the 110 to 201 range. This might be a little bit early for some people. It's a little spicy going him over the tight end still on the board. But if he does pan out at the 8 spot, I think it's good value, and I think he's going to develop well in New York.
Well, and like we said, Dynasty is not just a one-year thing, right? And Russ and Jameis aren't there for the long haul. So even if Jackson Dart doesn't, which there's talks that he's still going to get some snaps this season, so there's potential that he can be productive this season. But if you're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the line where Dynasty is kind of really important, I think there's definitely upside, especially with the weapons that he has. And the Giants have top 5 wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. They're improving their run game, improved their defense a lot. So I think there's definitely upside.
Yeah, there's definite upside. Maybe a little spicy for some people out there, but I got conviction. on Dart, so I'm gonna roll with it. Who do you got at 9?
Man, this is the tough one, and we kind of discussed this tier, this 7 through 10, 7 through 12 spot. 8, 7. I'll lump Quinton Judkins in there.
Okay.
I think I'm going with RJ Harvey, and I say that because we know his quarterback situation is solidified. They upgraded their defense, which was already strong last season. Bo Nix going into year 2, and he finished the season really strong. And I think the Broncos are a team that are in the playoff hunt, right? They're a team that wants to make a push for the playoffs. And I think with the running back situation there being unclear, I think RJ Harvey can plug in and be that Alvin Kamara type running back that Sean Payton's so used to. And they obviously used, round 2 capital on him, whereas his mock was, or his prediction going into the draft was probably more of a round 3 or round 4 guy. So the fact that Sean Payton and the Broncos saw something in RJ Harvey, that to me means that they want to utilize him right away. You don't reach on a player, a round plus and sit him from playing a bunch of snaps year 1, right? So I think they saw what they wanted in RJ Harvey as a guy that they can utilize in their offense right away. So I think he has a lot of upside.
And you look at that backfield, I mean, it's Jaleel McLaughlin and Audric Estime as like the other guys there right now. So yeah. I'm not scared of that competition at all for 100%. Harvey. I think he's going to come in and just dominate the touches, kind of like he did at UCF. So I think that's a really good pick.
He's used to being the workhorse, right? Like you mentioned at UCF. Yeah. He's used to being the guy that takes the team on his back, right? And I think that Denver can utilize him in all downs. And I think that's a valuable trait to have in a young running back.
Yeah, and he's 5'8", so he's not a big guy, but he is 205, so he's got enough weight to him to kind of withstand that work.
It's way bigger than McLaughlin. I think he's like 185 or something.
Yeah, and Harvey's also a 4.4 speed guy with impressive jumping ability, good explosion, so a lot to like there. Good pick at 9. With 10, I think I'm going to end Tyler Warren's slide here. I liked him too much pre-draft to let the landing spot affect it that much, especially since he did get the capital, right? He's still an early to mid round 1 guy. So we love the talent. We loved him going out there, taking handoffs, playing in Wildcat. Just they wanted to get the ball in his hands however they could because he's just a yak monster, And I think one thing you said about him, he kind of fiends for contact. He's running through people.
Yeah.
He's catching passes in tight spaces. He's very unaffected by contact and hands in his way. He's got strong hands, and I think he's an impressive athlete too.
Well, I think there's a lot more touchdown upside than people think with Tyler Warren. Not only is he 6'6" and can catch those contested passes in the red zone, but if you have somebody who has played quarterback in the past and can take those grindy, short yardage, wildcat snaps like away from your quarterback, especially Anthony Richardson, who wasn't fully healthy all season, I think that's really helpful. You have a guy now that you can rely and plug in as, hey, this is going to be my goal line tush push, goal line wildcat quarterback to eliminate my hopeful, fantasy quarterback in Anthony Richardson from having to take those collisions on the goal line every single time, right?
Absolutely, and the guy's 6'5", 260, so he's not going to be easy to bring down in those little areas. So I think he could definitely have some touchdown upside year 1. Little worried about the quarterback situation, but hopefully they figure it out eventually because I think Warren has some real nice upside, and we got to remember this is tight end premium as well. We're going
100%.
super flex tight end premium format, so we got to give a little boost to the quarterbacks and tight ends here. But at 11, who you thinking?
Tight end premium, man. Screw that. I'm going Caleb Johnson. I think he's going in that situation in Pittsburgh. He's going to plug into that Najee Harris role. When you go into a team, 1, they don't have a quarterback yet, so they're going to rely on the run game even more. 2, when you're coming into a system where Mike Tomlin just likes those gritty, grindy running backs That's exactly what Caleb Johnson was at Iowa. He was the workhorse for that team. And Mike Tomlin he likes those type of players. He doesn't need the flashiest guys. Now, is there a little hesitation with Jaylen Warren? Sure. But Jaylen Warren's not an every down back either. Caleb Johnson's going to get those red zone, those goal line touches. So I think he has an opportunity to have more success than Najee did with the Steelers. So especially with, again, their quarterback situation and being unclear, they're going to rely on the run game even more so. So I think he's in a good spot there, and I think at the end of the round one, it's a good landing spot for him.
I really like that pick. I mean, he's 6'1", 224. We got to keep in mind, and I think he does have build-up speed. He's not necessarily as slow as like a Najee Harris, because we got to remember he hit the 22 mile per hour threshold multiple times in college last year. And I don't think Najee ever sniffed that, in at Alabama. I think he's a little bit different of a bat. He's not quite as explosive as Caleb once he gets up to full speed. So Caleb did have a slow 10-yard split. He kind of takes a little while to get up to that speed. Mm-hmm. But when he does get going, he's a bruising back with some speed. And he gets downhill quickly. So I like that spot a lot for him in Pittsburgh. But at the 12 spot,
round us off, round one.
Yeah, I'll finish off the first round with your boy, and honestly, I think we both liked him quite a bit. But I'm gonna take Colson Loveland, just being tight end premium, like I just mentioned. Yeah. Couldn't let him fall outside the first because I do think that that top 10 overall capital, it does propel him into that back end of the first round for me in this format.
Yeah, how do you feel about the target shares there? There's a lot of competition. You have a guy like Cole Kmet who produced fine, right? He was a decent, tight end too if you needed a plug-in during bye weeks or injuries or anything like that. So how do you feel like Loveland's going to come in there and, get those targets that he deserves?
Yeah, I think you don't take a guy top 10 unless you're planning to use him, right? So they clearly have a vision for him, and it could be similar to how Ben Johnson used Sam Laporta in Detroit. Yeah. I think that Colson Loveland got similar draft capital to Laporta, similar college production as well. He was very productive at Michigan, even when they had a rough passing game at times throughout his career. So he's a great talent in his own right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we analyzed him pre-draft, said he was the best route runner of all tight ends. You're giving Caleb Williams another pass threat. And I think he can be his security blanket like he was at Michigan. Those 3rd and 5 downs, those kind of mid-yardage routes, I think he really will excel at.
Yeah, so that brings us to the end of the first round, and I'll do a quick recap before we get into the second round. So 101, you took Ashton Genty. 102, I grabbed Travis Hunter. At 3, you got Tet McMillan. 4 was Cam Ward. 5, Omarion Hampton. 6, Travion Henderson. 7, you grabbed Quinshon Judkins. I got my boy Jackson Dart at 8. You got RJ Harvey at 9. I went Tyler Warren at 10. You took Caleb Johnson at 11. And I rounded it off with Colson Loveland at 12. So you were on the clock at 2:01.
And I just want to preface this too, right, where this isn't each of us having this team. I know I'm drafting a lot of running backs and, no tight ends or quarterbacks yet. We're more plugging ourselves in if we were this team, if we were a team 7 or team 8 or whatever spot we're in. That's kind of who we're looking at. And obviously, right, Garrett, depending on who you have on your dynasty roster also impacts your judgment a little bit, right?
100%. Yep, we're doing 12 different teams here, not one super team, unfortunately. But
you versus me in one league.
you got to consider what your needs are to an extent. I generally like going best player available and just kind of trading and trying to fill my needs before the actual season starts, because there's a lot of time between now and September, right? We got plenty of time to make moves for positional needs. I don't personally like reaching a lot just to say, hey, I need a running back or I need a wide receiver. But that being said, if you have 2 or 3 guys in the same tier and you need one position more than the other, that can absolutely be the tiebreaker in some situations. So that's kind of how I look at it. But all right, tier 1. You want to get the second round kicked off?
Yeah, I think at this tier I'm looking at one of those 2 first-round wide receivers, or the 2 remaining. This is an interesting spot. I think Egbuka is going into Tampa Bay situation where there's two veteran wide receivers, and McMillan, who had a good rookie season last season, who are kind of fighting for those target shares. But that being said, I think Dynasty, this is a good time to wear that perspective of that near future is what's important, right? Year 2, year 3 is really important for Dynasty. So I think I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka here, and that's because I think, Mike Evans' contract situation is unclear. Chris Godwin is coming back from a pretty tough injury, and at some point, probably one of those two are going to be injured. And I think Egbuka can easily become the wide receiver 1 of that team if an injury was to happen. And even then, you have Baker slinging the ball around. They like throwing the ball a lot at Tampa Bay. They're an offense that I think is going to be pretty strong this season. So I think he has an opportunity to easily climb into the wide receiver 2 spot on the team. And then again, depending on injury, depending on how people are coming back from, last season's injuries, who knows? He could be their number 1 target for most of the season.
Yeah, I think some people question a little bit the landing spot, right? They're like, hey, this is a crowded situation. Even Jalen McMillan was playing very well at times. Yeah. And, hey, Liam Cohen just left and went to the Jags. Are they going to be the same kind of passing offense? But I think the Egbuka pick really signals that they plan on passing just as much as they were before, if not even more. So I think it's a very good pick. And I think that Mike Evans, as legendary as he is, he's probably, only got a year or 2 left before he's in the retirement home. So I think that's a good pick at 2-1. Let me sign it real quick. Got Emeka Egbuka 2-1. I'm on the clock at 2-2. And I was a little surprised you didn't take this guy. I think you know what I'm talking about here at 2-2. But I'm going to go ahead and grab Matthew Golden, your boy, going to the Green Bay Packers in the first round. I think him and Egbuka are very close. It's a tough call. But I do give Golden the nudge here over Luther Burden just because I think the Packers, they drafted him to be their number 1 guy. And I don't think you can say that for Luther Burden. So the Packers come into the draft, a lot of complimentary guys, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, who cannot stay healthy, and Jaden Reed, who is maybe their number 1 to start the season, but kind of faded down the stretch. So they needed a guy like Matthew Golden to step in, and I think he can be. And we love comping him to Brandon Cooks, so I think that's kind of our vision for him. I think he can be a big producer from day 1 in Green Bay.
Listen, I'm a big fan of Matthew Golden. I bumped him up a little bit in our rankings. I know, we had some preseason conversation or pre-draft conversations about Matthew Golden. I was really stuck between this pick, right? And I think the draft capital kind of made me lean to Egbuka a little bit, knowing that Tampa Bay is this high-powered offense. Baker likes to sling the ball. Injuries over there, I guess just like Green Bay, you never know with injuries, but I just think you could go either or here. I think Matthew Golden is going to come in and be potentially their true wide receiver 1. And I love the fact that Jordan Love likes to sling the ball too. So I think both offenses want to score a lot of points. So I think you can't go wrong with either one of them at that spot.
Yes, sir. All right, 2-3. Who you got?
All right, I think this is where I'm going to kind of get off track here with the normal ADP. I'm going to go Jaden Higgins here.
Ooh, okay.
I really like the fact that they're bringing in somebody who's a big body that can complement Nico Collins. They're an offense that needs to improve this next season, right? We had the sophomore slump. Why am I blanking on his name? CJ Stroud. We had the sophomore slump by CJ Stroud. That offensive line wasn't great.
Yeah.
Still some questions in the offensive line, but I think the injuries in the wide receiver room kind of really put a dark cloud over that offense throughout the season, with Diggs going out for the season, Tank Dell having a gruesome injury. You never know when he's going to come back. They brought in Christian Kirk to be that slot player. They drafted Jalen Noel too later on, who I think is going to plug in well with Christian Kirk there. I think Jaden Higgins is going to be their clear wide receiver 2. With Nico Collins getting a lot of the attention, you like the idea of somebody, a rookie, who is the clear-cut wide receiver 2. I like the fact that he's going to be the guy that's going to need to produce for that offense, right? And so with a lot of the attention on Nico Collins, that hopefully leaves Jaden Higgins opportunities to, shine.
And that was kind of my thought process after the draft is I was trying to consider, hey, how do I value Jaden Higgins versus Jalen Noel? Because obviously they took Higgins with a much higher pick, but, he's also kind of a more outside wide receiver, whereas Noel's in the slot. Christian Kirk's already there. So you got to imagine that they're just going to kind of let Noel develop behind Christian Kirk, right? And then Jaden Higgins will be the number 2 just kind of from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Kirk isn't a guy that is always healthy either. So, right. I think both of them have an opportunity to make a splash. Jaden Higgins, I mean, his athleticism is off the charts, right? He was one of the highest rated athleticism scorer of all the wide receivers. Houston loves their big body wide receivers, obviously with, see Nico Collins. So I think CJ Stroud needs to take a jump forward this next season. And I think having a good solid wide receiver 2 to help that offense will definitely make it happen.
A lot of people are calling him a Nico clone too, because there's a lot of similarities. He was more athletic than expected at the combine, which is, I remember scouting Nico Collins when he came out, and he was also a lot more athletic than I expected just from watching his Michigan tape. But then I watched the Senior Bowl. He's kind of like surprising people with his athleticism, very similar to Jaden Higgins, man. So he's going to be a very, very nice addition for CJ Stroud. But here at 4, I'm going to take my boy Cam Skattebo. Yeah. And it's a little bit of a homer pick being a Giants fan. But I do really like him, in the fit in New York. And I think they're going to use him a lot. They were excited to get him in the 4th round. And I wouldn't be surprised if he took over the majority role in that backfield. I do like Tyrone Tracy, but I could see like a 60-40 split by the end of the year in favor of Skattebo.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Skattebo. I've watched him since, he started at Sac State. We had him in our top 5 running backs. I think he's landed in an amazing situation, right? You have veteran quarterbacks to kind of lead the offense initially. You have good offensive weapons and a stronger defense too now. And you kind of needed that complement to Tyrone Tracy. And you couldn't have picked a better thunder to Tyrone Tracy's lightning than Cam Skattebo. So I think he's going to get a lot of those goal line touches too. So if we're looking at touchdown upside, he's definitely there. And he's a good pass catching weapon too. So let's not forget that he caught the ball really well at Arizona State the 2 seasons he was there. So, there's a lot of upside there.
I saw a stat the other day, that said he was the first running back since Christian McCaffrey to have over 1,500 yards rushing and over 500 yards receiving in the same season.
And he had
in college football.
I don't know how many yards passing too, but he threw some passes too. So he might have a stat of his own, so.
Yeah, and I think he really put that on display against Texas, just how much he can put a team on his back when he needs to. So that's an exciting weapon to add if you're the Giants. But you're up at 2-5.
This is where it starts getting a little tougher, right? You have to kind of consider a lot of things. I think for me, landing spot's really important here. Somebody who has the opportunity to make the impact, even if they weren't a top, first 2-round draft pick. So I'm gonna reach up a little bit. I know some people are having him climb on their ADP a little bit more, but I'm going Kyle Williams here. I think New England's offense. I think Drake May has had a great rookie season, and I think he's a guy that year 2 is going to make a big leap. Bringing in Stephon Diggs, I think, is really helpful too, because I think he still has some a couple good solid years, especially after coming off this injury this last season. And the fact that New England had no weapons at all, they bring in Kyle Williams, who can be a strong wide receiver too for Stephon Diggs. You bring in Trayvon Henderson, another pass threat there too for New England. I think this offense is going to make strides this season, and I think Kyle Williams is really going to help that team. So.
Yeah, and I think Diggs is going to take some of the attention off of Kyle Williams. You don't want to be a rookie always having the number 1 corner on you, so that helps out some. And I think he can learn a lot from Diggs too. He's a very good route runner. He's a separation artist, and that's kind of a similar play style to Stephon Diggs. So I think he can learn from the veteran and really, really develop into Drake May's eventual number 1. So I like the pick, and a little bit of a flag plan from our boy E over here.
Hey,
so I like it.
And what? I think that's a good. Before you go on to the next pick, I think that's a good point, right? When you kind of get to the tougher picks, you're going to need to take those risks, right? You really don't know. There aren't many guys that are often just like guaranteed winners, right? And so at some point you have to take that risk of, okay, maybe I should take a leap and, maybe pick somebody a little bit sooner than ADP might have him, just because I think, in the long term or in the next couple of years, he's a guy that could really produce for the team. So, and Kyle Williams is a guy for me.
Yeah, you can't be a slave to that ADP if you want to take the best players. You want to have a high hit rate in your rookie mock draft. You got to take who you like most. You got to have conviction, and you can't just be following ADP. So I like
Stamp that flag.
Yep, flag plant 205. All right, 206. I'm on the clock, and there are some interesting considerations for me here. You got Luther Burden. Jack Bash is also a consideration. Jalen Milroe. I'm not going to drop too many names. I'm going to give you all my players. But, I think I'm going to stop Luther Burden's slide here, and I'm going to take him at the middle of the second round. I think we like the talent too much to let him slip any further than this. So I know the landing spot's not necessarily ideal, but he did get solid capital still in the beginning of the second round. And Ben Johnson has already been very vocal about how much he likes Luther Burden, just in interviews and stuff. I think they were questioning the pick a little bit. They're like, "Hey, you guys have other needs, but what made you take Luther Burden in the second?" And he's like, he basically just said, like, "Did you watch the tape?" Like, it was kind of like, "This guy's a stud. What, are you missing something?" Or so he's very confident in his pick, and I think he has a pretty big vision for him, but he might take a little bit of time to really start producing in fantasy.
Yeah, and I really love this pick, and I think picking Kyle Williams is more so because of the landing spot and the immediate potential. Clearly, Ben Johnson is drafting his pseudo Lions offense, right? Your Colson Loveland as your Sam Laporta, your Luther Burden as your Amon St. Brown. So, like, DJ Moore and Roma Dunze are great talented, great players. They're not Ben Johnson guys though, right? They're not guys that Ben Johnson, and that kind of staff drafted. So I think that is something to consider with the fact that it's not like they drafted Luther Burden in the fourth round, right? They got him second, third round. What do you remember?
They got him beginning of the second. I think they kind of thought they got a steal too. So.
Yeah, and I mean we had late round one grades on him. I think if he was drafted in a landing spot where he was a clear wide receiver too, I would have drafted him 4 or 5 spots earlier for sure. I think we're both high on his talent. So,
100%.
But I think that's great value there, and I think he's going to make more of an impact this season than people think.
Yeah, he might surprise some people. We'll see. It'll be interesting to kind of see how that offense unfolds with the target distribution. But that takes us to the second half of the second round. You are on the clock at 2-7, my friend.
Yeah, this is where it's getting tougher. I think I'm going with that similar strategy of who's a guy that potentially can come in and be that wide receiver too, and who's a guy, I think when looking at Dynasty, we look at teams who have a path moving forward, and I think that's why I'm going to go with Trey Harris here. I think he could come in, take that wide receiver 2 job from Quinton Johnson, be the number 2 guy with Vlad McConkey. Justin Herbert's getting more offensive weapons, bringing in, Harbaugh, going to year 2. Year 2?
Yep.
Harbaugh's okay.
Is it year 2 or year 3?
I don't know. Harbaugh, I just, I forget where he is at times.
I think it's year 2. Yeah.
But I think the fact that they drafted Trey Harris to be that wide receiver 2, I think has some
value. He's going to get a lot of opportunity. Yeah, I like to pick. I mean, there was a clear void there 100%. Last year. You could see it. It was very very ugly in the playoffs when, he could only essentially throw to Ladd McConkey, and the defense knew it was coming every time, and they were kind of just keying in on him. So I think it's going to bring some balance to that offense, and Trey Harris is kind of like that big jump ball guy, and that's obviously not who Ladd McConkey is, so it's a nice compliment.
Yeah, and I think, I think the Chargers brought back Mike Williams too, but I think Trey Harris can pretty quickly, leap Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston to be that, wide receiver too. So I think that's a good pick.
And I kind of think that Mike Williams is an interesting comp for him. Like, just a younger version of Mike Williams. I mean, play style, it's pretty similar. So maybe you can even learn from Big Mike a little bit.
100%.
But all right, I like the pick at 2-7. 2-8, I'm going to go with Ooh, this is a tough call for me, man. I'm between two people here, but I'm gonna go with Jack Besh, the second round pick of the Las Vegas Raiders, who
Yeah.
they're quietly building a pretty good offense there in Vegas. So I like the pick with Jack Besh, and I think they have plans to use him pretty much right away. You know, they outside of Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers last year, the Raiders really didn't have a lot to throw to. You know, there wasn't a lot of other weapons there. So I think Jack Besh can step in as that number 3 target in the passing game immediately.
100%. I think he landed in a perfect spot for him. You have, Trey Tucker as that wide receiver 3 who's more of that explosive deep ball threat. Jack Besh is going to be that consistent route runner who, rarely drops passes, rarely makes mistakes. And that offense obviously has made several upgrades this offseason, so I like that spot.
Yep. All right. 2-9. Who you thinking?
All right. This is with considering the tight end premium. He was a guy that actually wasn't in our top 5 pre-draft, but I think with that round 2 draft capital and kind of the target share situation, I'm going with Mason Taylor here. Using a round 2 draft pick for a tight end. Obviously, they're putting a lot of capital into him. There's no real second option for New York, right, after Garrett Wilson. I mean, I think they signed Josh Reynolds and then Alan Lazard.
And Justin Fields likes to use his tight ends, right?
Yeah, and they have an upgrade in quarterback too in that situation over there. Well, I guess depending on what you think about Aaron Rodgers, but regardless, I think their offense is going to be a little bit more explosive this season. And you're right. I think Justin Fields has opportunity to kind of make those extend plays with his feet, and then what's better, nothing better than just dumping it off to your tight end there. So
throwing a little lob ball in the back of the end zone.
Yeah, throw a lob to your 6'5", 6'6" tight end, and just let him handle it. So I'm gonna go Mason Taylor here.
I like it. All right, Mason Taylor at 2-9 to the New York Jets, and that might be one of the guys that we kind of missed pre-draft, right? He was on our radar. We were considering him for top 5, but he didn't quite make his way in there. Another guy in our top 5 tight ends who I'm considering here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just take, is Elijah Arroyo. And I really like his landing spot in Seattle. I mean, Seattle is another team who's adding a lot of weapons. They definitely, I think, filled a void. I mean, Noah Fant has been serviceable for them, but I think Elijah Arroyo has the upside to kind of stretch the seams and add a new element in Seattle.
Yeah, 100%. I think he was a guy that really improved his draft capital with the Senior Bowl, his athleticism, and he just looks, like a freaky tight end. So I think he'll be a guy that can definitely make an impact right away. And no offense, a veteran at this point. So, good guy to at least learn from, and not a bad, route runner himself. So I like that spot a lot.
Yeah, I think he can provide that, safety blanket for Sam Darnold, and he's really fast, man. He when you're watching the film, and especially the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, he's just separating with ease, and there's not a lot of linebackers or safeties who are going to be able to stay with him. So 100%. I like his upside quite a bit. Maybe a little early compared to ADP. I think he's going in the 3rd round for the most part right now, which I got to say, I love that value in the 3rd round. I took him here just kind of that's where I value him. But anyways, you're back on the clock at 211.
Yeah, similar to kind of that thought process. I'm going to go my first quarterback that I've drafted so far. Right. I'm going to take Jalen Milroe. I think he's a guy, Sam Darnold is going to come into Seattle and be this starter. But Darnold's contract doesn't guarantee him, after this season. And I think Jalen Milroe is a guy that is willing and wants to learn from veteran quarterbacks. He's a guy with an elite tool set of athleticism. He's great with the ball in his hands. He has a strong arm. He just kind of needs to dial it in a little bit more, right? And so I think he's a guy that is a great, year 2, 3 piece that can really be a Lamar-style quarterback when he figures things out. So I think, especially with Dynasty where you're not looking at immediate need and you're willing to allow players to develop a little bit, he's a guy that I think for both you and I, his ceiling is probably higher than anybody in this draft, right?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little jealous that you got him there at 211. I might, if this was a real league, I might look back at this and say, "Damn, I took Arroyo at 210, and then E got to steal the draft at 211." Because I do think he has the highest ceiling of all the quarterbacks in the draft, and that's saying a lot with Cam Ward being in this draft. But man, if he hits, he's going to hit. And in fantasy, especially with the dual threat ability, the rushing, capability, I do think he sits for a little while. But if you have the patience, this is a guy who could pay off big time for you. 100%. So that's a great pick at the back of the second. And I'm on the clock with the last pick.
Round us out.
Draft. So I want to hear your thoughts first before I make my decision on Tutton. Because that's a backfield that I'm like, post-draft, I don't know what to think of it. They got Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby returning. They drafted Tutton in the 4th, pretty early in the 4th, I think. So It was serious capital. And then they took LaQuint Allen, another guy who I kind of thought was pretty sneaky, especially as a pass catcher. And they got him in the 7th. Yeah. So they have 4 legitimate running backs now, and I don't know what to think. Like, how does this play out? Are you high on Tutton or are you not?
It's funny. We weren't super high on him coming into the draft, but we know with Etienne, I think he's going into his last year of his contract. Likely that this might be his last season in a Jags uniform. And I think Basil Tutin really fits into that spot and kind of will be a good complement for Tank Bigsby. Now, LaQuint Allen, like we said, I was pretty high on him coming into the draft. And I really love the fact that they were like, hey, this is good value in the 7th round. Let me just take this kind of unorthodox style runner. But I think I'm high and I'm bullish on the Jags offense being a lot more explosive. You saw what Liam Cohen did with multiple running backs in Tampa. He's a guy that wants to utilize multiple running backs. So I think if, after maybe this season when there's a little bit more clarity of where the other 2 running backs are going to be, I think Tutin has a great opportunity, year 2, year 3. And right away, again, injuries are so big. One injury happens between Etienne or Tank Bigsby, and Tutin can easily take over the backfield, right? And Cohen is a guy that wants to feed the hot hand. You saw that with Bucky Irving coming in and kind of taking all those snaps from the Rachaad White and those guys. So he's a guy that doesn't care whether you're drafted in the 7th round or the 4th round. If you're the hot hand, he's going to play you, and I think Basil Tutin is a guy that can get really, really hot, really, really fast.
And I actually co-own a team with another Jags friend. I guess all my friends are Jaguar fans. But anyways, he wanted Tutton in the beginning of the 2nd, and I was like, I don't know, man. There's some other values that I kind of like a little more. But he's like, do you really want to miss out on this year's Bucky Irving? In that Liam Cohen offense? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really see the player comp, I think Bucky was a guy who actually didn't test very well, and it was more his tape spoke volumes to me, whereas Tutton, his tape didn't blow me away, but then you look at his athletics and his measurables and you're like 4.32. Oh my God, so he's a little bit of a different player. I think he's more of a straight line guy, whereas Bucky is just incredibly shifty, stop and start guy. So a little bit different styles, but man, I don't know if you sold me on Tutton, so I think I'm going to go in a different direction. And there's a few players here that I don't want to let slip out of the 2nd, but they can't all go in the top 2 rounds. So I'm going to pick and choose. I'm going to pick Terrence Ferguson here, going to the Rams, and I think he's in that same range as Taylor Arroyo. So I didn't want him to slip out of that round because I think he belongs there. And McVay, he clearly liked him quite a bit to take him in the 2nd round, right?
Totally. Yeah, he's a guy that I was extremely high on coming into the draft. Ran a 4.63, long strider. We comped him to
David Njoku. Right?
David Njoku, yeah. And I saw flashes of Josh Oliver too, out of San Jose State. So he's a guy that I think in that offense, now that they've upgraded a couple, to me, bringing in Devontae Adams was a huge plus for their offense. Kyron Williams has kind of rejuvenated that offense, that ground game. He's a guy that, there's 2 veteran tight ends in front of him with Tyler Higbee and Colby Parkinson, but neither one of them are elite pass catchers at this point in their career. I think he easily can lead Colby Parkinson when it comes to just ability early on. And then Tyler Higbee, I can't remember the last time he's played a full season with health. And two, he isn't the same, pass catcher threat that he was in the past. So I think Terrence Ferguson, again, with the draft capital as well and the landing spot, can plug in really well in that explosive offense.
Yeah, and I think this is like, just generally speaking, how we're valuing tight end. I think anyone listening would be wise to kind of follow that in their own drafts, just because I think there's a lot of second and third round wide receivers who are getting pushed up the board who could easily be busts. This class is not the kind of wide receiver class of last year. And there are names that we like. Obviously, we drafted quite a few in the second round ourselves. But these Mason Taylor, Arroyo, Ferguson, these are all early second round guys. I mean, that kind of capital in tight end premium where you get the extra point per, either extra half point to extra point per catch, depending on what kind of format you play in. That could be a big boost. And I think all these guys have a lot of opportunity, with their landing spots as well. So I don't want to let these tight ends drop in the draft if I'm playing in tight end premium this year.
100%. And Terrence Ferguson, has been my guy for both of us. So I definitely think with the tight end premium, his landing spot, and the Sean McVay offense, he's a good player to round us off. But Garrett, that was fun going back and forth for close to an hour. Any final thoughts on our mock draft?
No, thanks to everyone who joined us for the full duration of the draft, and hopefully it was some helpful advice for you guys about to go into your rookie drafts yourself. So good luck to everyone. Hope you get the steal of the draft, and let us know in the comments, did we miss anyone that you would have included in the top 2 rounds? Who do we have too high? Who do we have too low? Let us know your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. Please like the video, and we'll catch you for the next one.